friends. This is another episode of the program Empire of Lies, in which we talk about manipulation and disinformation in the Russian media. Trump as a peacemaker, Ukraine as the culprit, a new construction of Russian propaganda. Russian television continues to demonstrate amazing flexibility in the interpretation of international events. If at the beginning of the war the main enemy was the United States and NATO, now Donald Trump is at the center of the narrative, who is presented as the only politician capable of stopping the bloodshed. The latest episode of the program Big Game clearly shows how the Kremlin media machine rewrites reality and offers the West a false dilemma. Ukraine's capitulation or saving lives. America as a war merchant, Trump is presented on air not as a participant in the conflict, but as a skilled businessman who managed to turn the war into a source of income. A direct quote is heard: "We no longer finance Ukraine, we sell weapons to NATO countries." The hosts accompany it with a sarcastic definition of mercenaries of war. This formulation of the question has a dual purpose. Firstly, to convince Europeans that they are the ones paying for the war, while the US is only profiting. And secondly, to emphasize the cynicism of American policy, where the war is reduced to a trade deal. This emphasis is especially important for the Russian audience, which must believe that America is tired and is about to refuse to support Kyiv. Ukraine as the culprit of the catastrophe. The second line is a consistent accusation against Ukraine that the conflict arose at all. The hosts and invited experts repeat Trump's words: "You can't start a war against someone who is 15 times stronger." Such arithmetic, population, territory, economy is presented as proof of Kyiv's doom. Zelensky is portrayed as a failed leader, Biden as an incompetent ally, and the Ukrainian leadership as a whole as the initiator of a hopeless adventure. This erases the original fact. This is a war of aggression by Russia against a sovereign state. Putin as a sincere peacemaker, American Special Envoy Stephen Witkow plays a special role. His statements are presented as proof that Putin sincerely wants peace. The program repeats the thesis about the existence of a draft peace treaty, which supposedly already sets out the terms of the settlement. Details are kept silent, but viewers are instilled with the idea that if even Trump and his trusted people trust Putin, then Russia should be trusted. This is a classic example of substitution of concepts. The aggressor is transformed into a guarantor of peace, and the victim into an obstacle to negotiations. Sanctions as a useless tool. An important part of the program is devoted to economic measures. Trump is quoted as if he is ready to resort to economic warfare, but does not want to do so in order to avoid World War III. The experts immediately developed the idea: it is no longer possible to put pressure on Russia economically. The West has no more resources. The task is clear: to create the illusion that the sanctions potential has been exhausted, which means that the only way is to negotiate with Moscow on its terms. He threatened again in his usual spirit, but said nothing concrete. Let's hear it. I want them to finally make a deal. I will take very serious measures if I am forced to act, but I would like to see a deal. We are not talking about a world war, but it will be an economic war. Economic war is bad, and it will hurt Russia very much. I do not want that. Thousands of people, mostly young, are dying every week. If I could save them by lifting sanctions or applying very tough tariffs that will cost Russia or Ukraine or anyone else very dearly, I would do it. Well, in general, Vladimir Sergeyevich, you see that the statement is like this. On the one hand, it is about an economic war. On the other hand, he does not want to unleash this economic war. Well, against this background, this is also an additional, one might say, question for you. Trump, however, seems to have not cancelled the additional tariffs against India by 25%. Theatricality and the cult of personality. It is interesting that the program describes in detail a meeting of Trump's cabinet, turned into a show praising the leader. This is presented as a natural part of US political life. In fact, the viewer is shown a picture familiar to the Russian eye, a strong leader and his grateful team. Thus, the audience is pushed to the idea that the American system is not much different from the Russian one. There, too, everything depends on one person. You are on the program Empire of Lies. See you soon.